Our next speaker is Marilynne Miles Gray, and she'll talk about what good is an idea if no one gets it, and beyond brainstorming.
I have one more handout.
All right, I'll have it.
Oh.
Unless you can share with somebody.
Well, I'll send
Or
you
you
something
can,
to share.
okay.
Sure.
Good morning. You are going to get an abbreviated version of speed dating with ideas, perhaps. This is two ideas or two presentations in one. So hang tight. I may have to go at the speed of light. In your handout, you'll take a look at one of the reasons why I'm going to focus first on brainstorming, because you've got to create the idea before you push it out, which is the what good's an idea no one gets. And when you push it out and nobody gets it, well, all your work is for naught. I focused on brainstorming simply because it's so familiar to many of us. It's taught in schools, it's familiar, and I have the suspicion that there's been a lot of marketing and publicity, and so we opt for it. If you take a look at the handout at the very top, in doing some of the research I've been doing on creativity, brainstorming being one technique used to generate ideas, I was curious, and so I went on to Amazon.com and took a look at the very popular creativity books by various gurus, and you can see some sample rankings. Currently, Cognitive Surplus is the #1 book, but there's other ones like Thinker Toys and Flow and Whack on the Side of the Head and so on. And it's been very interesting. But let's go back to brainstorming and our speed dating ideas. My research in creativity is about 60 pages. It's a real treasure trove. There's a periodic chart of visual creativity. There's TRIZ, which is one of the more extensive systems of 40 creativity principles covering decades of research on creativity styles, how to deal with creativity blocks. And there's no real organizer for much of the creative thinking that goes on, but we're so familiar with brainstorming that we sometimes tend to fall back into it. I was curious, what's wrong with brainstorming? So I came up for you 4 pieces of research and 4 upgrades on brainstorming if that's something you'd like to do. And you see my little Albert Einstein diagram. What's wrong with it? Well, first, brainstorming is Alex Osborne's creation back in the 1930s for ad agency people. It's not meant to be all-purpose. Many of us have taken part in brainstorming sessions to get us to think laterally, generate ideas, and come up with a solution to problems. What can happen during a brainstorming session, however, is that key players on the team speak up first. Everybody else then enters the discussion about those few ideas. They reach a consensus to the solution without considering, often, the many other ideas that could have been generated. So this is one drawback. Status quo people may tend to propose only safe alternatives. Some may not speak up because they're shy, or they're afraid their suggestions may be rejected. Others may say nothing at all because they fear their ideas are simply too outrageous or bold. So research on individual creativity versus group brainstorming suggests the emphasis on teams may smother the lone genius. In fact, that's suggested that's the #1 problem. Generativity theory suggests that brainstorming, amongst other common approaches, has limited value. It works to some extent because it exposes team participants to multiple social stimuli. It's called a surrounding technique. But it inhibits creativity by exposing you or the members to disapproval. An upgrade solution. Each idea generated is given a preliminary plausibility checklist as part of the process itself. So other researchers claim brainstorming produces fewer truly useful ideas in comparison with other methods. So I'll tell you a piece of research. G.S. Altshuler, he's apparently very famous in the field of creativity. I kept on coming across his name in my several years of research on creativity. They compared two teams working on the same task. One team is instructed to stay together for the 20-minute typical brainstorming activity. The second team is instructed to start with 5 minutes on your own. That's the individual. And then they go back to 5-minute team meeting. 5 minutes on your own, 5 minutes together, so a total of 20 minutes. And then they look for how many ideas each format produced. The shifting group, on, together, alone, generates twice as many ideas as the typical brainstorming group. And they concluded two things. Because creativity is always an individual process, and social disapproval is the major deterrent to creativity, the better generation rate occurs if people have an opportunity to work alone. There are other upgrade solutions to brainstorming, reversing it, where you start with a reverse question, such as instead of asking, how do I solve this problem, you ask, how could I possibly cause the problem? Or instead of asking, how do I achieve these results, how could I possibly achieve the opposite effect? There's other ones in which the charrette method, you take an idea, you work with it, and then you cartwheel it, which is what charrette means in French. You cartwheel it to another group. They work on it. You cartwheel it to another group, and so on. Well, some other pieces of research, if I move away a little bit from brainstorming before I get to the what good is an idea that nobody gets part of the presentation, is a couple of pieces generally on creativity itself. Teresa Amabile, the head of the Harvard Business Management School, has been studying the petitions for creativity for 30 or more years. So I guess she knows something about it. She and her team looked at 238 people over 18 months in one company of 6,000 employees. None of the participants knew it was a study of creativity and about the assumptions on creativity. The results are similar to a number of other studies. So, I'm going to give you orally these 6 questions, and you mentally say whether these are true or false. These are assumptions about creativity. A, most people aren't creative. True or false? B, money is a creativity motivator. True or false? C, time pressure fuels creativity. True or false? D, negative emotions force breakthroughs. True or false? E, competition beats collaboration. And the last one, a streamlined organization or situation is a creative organization. All of those, according to her research, are false. Item 2. Researchers credit 90 to 95% of the major discoveries made during the past 200 years to Einstein-style visual thinking. 3, and if you look at your handout, to the diagram showing beta, alpha, theta, and delta in the box, research suggests that creativity, the process, has 3 aspects. 1, you focus your attention to get you to escape the current reality, and 3, to continue the mental movement. So it helps if a creativity tool on the market gives various combinations of practical ways to help you move through the 4 brain, these are called meta waves, or metastorm waves. They hook people up to MRIs to take a look at what happened when you were coming up with the aha ideas. Apparently in beta, the first one, you have 57 discrete measurable brainwave lengths. It's also the point at which the least amount of healing, learning, and creativity occur. Just too much going on. So then you need to focus your attention. So the first step is to stop trying to grab the idea. Stop thinking about it, looking for it, and worrying about it. These ideas are like the dream you try to remember the next morning. Next to access the creative subconscious mind by entering the state of altered consciousness, initially you enter the alpha, which is the next box, wave state. It's very light and you run the risk of daydreaming or fantasizing. The next brainwave state is theta. This is where you learn things that seem impossible to know and yet you just know it. And D, theta is followed by delta, which is the brainwave state of the healer or the mystic, a very deep state of altered consciousness. But it may not require 20 years of sitting on a remote mountain cave chanting mantras to get to that state. And the last piece of research before we move into part 2, and I hope we have time to cover it, it may be that how a person is thinking before a problem solving begins is as important as the kind of thinking involved. And it actually may even determine whether or not the solution will be derived with a sudden aha insight. So how is as important as kind. Research at 2 universities in the US revealed that just prior to an aha solution, the brain momentarily reduces visual inputs similar to a person shutting his or her eyes, looking away to facilitate the emergence into consciousness of the solution. I've been told I have 1 minute, so let's just look at the very bottom portion. If you go to a book called Made to Stick by Dan and Chip Heap, H-E-A-P. They're both university professors. They've done a wonderful job of summarizing 6 principles of making an idea stick, making it memorable. Sorry I couldn't do part 2 of my presentation, but I told you it was 2 presentations melded into one to see whether I could do the impossible. But if you at the break want to ask me some questions about this, but the book is well worth reading. There's other people who've done the same work, but theirs is very well done because they took their own research and advice to heart. So there you go. Thanks much.